Boom. There we go. We're live.
We're here.
Live Thursday, the 20th of October, the day that Liz Truss has. Did she step down? Was she fired? What's the political way of putting
it?
Resigned.
Shoved out the door gently, I think, or more ferociously.
She couldn't fix her own mess, could she? So
I wonder if you get a P45 still when you're no longer the Prime Minister. I don't know. Actually, I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But it's been a bit of a crazy one, isn't it? In fact, my 6-year-old daughter just came in here, and I mentioned to her, I said, I'm just going to quickly have a look at what's gone on with the Prime Minister. And she didn't know who the Prime Minister was. She thought it was still Boris. But that's the world we're in now. It's just turning around. Like,
about, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've heard Boris might reapply. He's 10-1 at the moment. Honestly.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's crazier than the Premier League football team, isn't it? The government at the moment. But anyway, I mean, we've put it on there and we've sort of kicked off with it. Obviously, she's gone now. What do we think it means for the property market? I want to know, and I want to know what the people watching think it means. What kind of the people listening and watching that are joining us now? We've just gone live. What does it mean? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Because a lot of the concerns around the economy was the mini budget that happened, and a lot of the negativity was around her still being in power and the fact that people wanted her to step down. Well, now she has resigned, stepped down, P45, sacked, booted. What does that actually mean? Are people happy with that? Do they think it's going to bring? Obviously, it's not a quick win on the economy, but I want to know if you're watching now and you're joining us, and we're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, we're in groups. Say hi, drop us a like, drop a comment, give us the thumbs up if you can hear us. But also let us know what you think today's news means for the market. Georgina, any thoughts on it? I'll come to you first.
I think there's a lot of people that aren't happy with the current government. And it's always been between Labour and the Tories. It's always been one messes it up so much and then the other one comes in and apparently saves the day. It seems to be just history repeating itself. And I'm not saying that Labour have got any chance of getting in. I mean, in my opinion, we need a whole overhaul on the whole process, but that would be a very long conversation. So, yeah, I there's people calling for a general election. Nobody's voted in this Prime Minister or the next, or actually the last one. So, it'd be a very long conversation for us to have.
It's a weird one, that, isn't it? Because I think that's part of the reason why maybe, and we're not here to talk about politics tonight, but it might be one of the reasons why people haven't really bought in to the prime ministers, because they weren't voted in, were they? It's a good point. What do you think, Dan? What's your kind of take on it? Or are you fussed? Are you kind of thinking, okay, well, it's just happened, we move on? Or any sort of further thoughts on it at all?
I get disillusioned with it all because of either a lack of understanding or care, because of what Georgina says. You have no commitment to any of them. But I saw that earlier on. That's so good, isn't it? That's so good.
I mean, that's kind of, I guess, we're long-term let. So if you are looking to rent your property out, we can help you as a landlord or a tenant. But if you're looking for some short stays in some, and I don't know what it looks like inside, but apparently Airbnb are sponsoring Downing Street number 10. That's a cracker.
I think that it can't mean anything bad, anything worse than what's happened in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks with the uncertainty that she's caused with the decisions she's made. So you can only imagine that someone's going to try and do the complete opposite in a short time. The Tories might have, power, I suppose, because it looks likely that Labour would get in no matter what, just because people want to change. So they're probably going to do something to try and reverse some of the I suppose, I think call them bad decisions or not, but what's happened. So it might mean a positive outcome or a bit of certainty coming with the pound getting stronger and things like that. And maybe some people feeling a bit more confident in the housing market might be a result from it.
I think that's hopefully the confidence that if a good budget comes in on the 3rd of November, that we will we'll have some positive and some reinforcements to what the plan is with the economy moving forward. That's the hope, I think, for everyone. Ryan, what do you think?
Yes, I think similar vibe to what the guys have both said. Look, it's like clearly she's obviously, and she was an intelligent lady, and everyone that's at the top end of politics clearly have done something right in their careers. But at the same time, she just got found out way too quickly. And I know I'm not a fan of that many politicians, but Rishi Sunak during the chats and the leadership contest, he basically said, if you cut all the taxes, this will happen. They cut all the taxes, and guess what happened? Exactly what he said would happen. And it's just frustrating, really, because obviously the media gets onto it and kind of creates this this illusion that everything's falling apart, and that may well be the case. But unfortunately, the housing market has suffered for it over the last few weeks. And you would say that the market's been outrageously crazy over the last 2.5 years since COVID. So maybe it did need a dampen down, but to artificially create a dampening down of the market doesn't really help anyone. But yeah, I think Dan hit the nail on the head. We're kind of disillusioned with it now. Like it is what it is. Is the next person going to be any better? I think the next prime minister needs to be someone that can stamp their authority straight away and show that at least they have an understanding of what real people need and what real people want, rather than just saying what they think we need. No one really needed tax cuts. Okay, cost of living was going up. Fully appreciate that, but at the same time, we need the economy to grow, so we will have more money. That's the reality, isn't it? And it just didn't seem like they knew anything like they were doing.
I think we need someone to say that and then take the action to see that follow through. And for the housing market, what does it mean? I think we're a little bit in kind of, like you say, a bit disillusioned, a bit bored of it all now, but we need to know what the plan is moving forward. We've had the stamp duty change, which is great. It means people are going to save on tax. Obviously, the inflation levels have resulted in interest rates becoming much higher, although some have dropped this week, some have gone up. So it kind of, it's a bit of a yo-yo effect there, but they are much higher than they were before. And we'll see what comes in the budget. But one thing I know from my week this week, I've had an unbelievably crazy week, and properties have gone live. People have wanted to sell. People have wanted to move. People wanted to buy them. We've agreed a lot of sales across the group this week as well. So for us, put on our hoodies, pink or black, and we will march on effectively and work on behalf of the clients that need us. So talking of clients, making the right offer for you. Come to you first on this, Dan, because as you sit there, congratulations, you're in your new property, moving in this week. And how was the experience for you? And how would you advise people moving forward to make the right offer for them and their situation?
So first, would you mean what, making an offer on a property? How to offer one on one?
Yeah. But first of all, you've just moved. I know obviously you've moved effectively with yourself, so I'm sure the service was very good.
Oh, it's fantastic! Like it went so smoothly.
Are you going to do your own Google review?
Do you know? I don't think I'd get away with that, would I? So it was just too good a review. So yeah, first of all, moved house on Friday last week. Hence why I look a bit tired and got lots of boxes in the background still. It's getting there, but there's a lot of work to do. I think first bit of advice I give people just around moving, I think it's quite nice to hear, because I can say firsthand, I know what I'm doing, and I sold and bought. It still took almost 5 months, and that was through no fault of obviously mine or the seller to me or my buyer. It's just the time a lot of the moving parts took to get everyone in a position with extra bits of pop up. So just on expectations of people moving, always just try and listen and understand it might take longer than you think. So I think there's a lot of people still think it's sort of 12 weeks from the point you find a buyer, which is it's just not going to be. Mm-hmm. So that's the first bit of advice I give. But on making offers, it's always making an offer based on, I think, your circumstance and how you feel about that home and how much you want to live in there. So with the house I'm in now, I want to be here for the foreseeable future. Obviously, things may change, but I've moved in here. It's a perfect location for me. I wanted this house. I don't want to be anywhere else, and I made a big decision to move here. So I would have offered the right money, no matter what that was to me, so I could make that work. And we're still getting houses where we've got multiple offers. So even in this current market, last week, we had a 2-bedroom semi-detached for sale. It's on at 375 with a garage. it went for well over the asking price. We had 5 offers on that property, so there's still people hungry out there to buy. But funny enough, the 2 offers, there's about 3 very similar, but the one that got it wrote an email out, it's almost like a letter with all their situation, but the reasons to also why they wanted to live there. So they put the best offer they could put forward, which was a very good offer, but also they knew they wanted to be there for like 10 years. The reasons why they wanted to be in that area, why it was important to them. It wasn't just a slapdash purchase because there wasn't something else. And that went a long way. So I think there's a lot of passion that can go behind your offer as well as just a figure. And that's how I viewed it when I made an offer on this. And I think that's really comes across well when people are making offers on others.
Yeah, I think that emotional connection, I think it's a really good point, actually, because as we move into, and we spoke off camera quickly and said we are in a different market now to where we were previously. And I think everyone can see that. And we're not going to be the type of estate agents that try and say, oh, yeah, business as usual. It's, you know, everything's rah, 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 because it is different. But it is still a market which is normal if you take the last 20 years. You know, we're seeing volumes of listings and viewings normal on an average. So it's just not the crazy that we've seen for the last 2 years. But I think each property has a lifestyle. And Dan, you bought your property because that's the lifestyle you want. You want that home, you want the garden, you want the location, and that's the lifestyle. And I think what's really important, Georgina, is when an agent is marketing a property, that the way the property is marketed, that it portrays that lifestyle in its most honest and fair way. And I was joking with Matt Barrell, the agent that covers Central Reading. We were talking about estate agents' buzzwords on their kind of descriptions, you know, nicely presented and, you know, close to local commuter links and amenities and things like that. Because it's a bit jargony, isn't it, estate agent chatter? But how important do you feel your buyers and your sellers feel about the sellers' comments and their involvement in the marketing? I think we've lost your. Oh, you're on mute, Georgina.
Sorry, my child was making noise in the background, so I thought I'd mute myself for the best. Yeah, I get really positive feedback from that, from viewers and actually sellers as well, because they like to have their input on the marketing and tell us, you know, all about why they brought it or what they've done to improve the property. And they know that it goes a long way in terms of people, you know, coming to have a look. I try and get a bit creative, or very creative, with my write-ups on the agent view section. And I almost like to tell a little story rather than just the, you know, the wishy-washy, you know, little paragraph that a lot of agents go for. So yeah, and I think it really does make a difference. And again, I do get good feedback from that, and people really get to know the property before they even come to look. So yeah, I think it's an amazing idea. So yeah, I like to carry that forward.
I found, Ryan, when on the viewings, actually, it's one of the things that buyers sometimes bring up is they like the fact that they've heard, you know, why the seller bought it or what they love about the area and things like that. It's just a nicer way to portray that lifestyle that I think is really important in the market we're in.
Yeah, it kind of makes it much more personal, doesn't it? In terms of you understand their position, you understand a bit more about the sellers, and a lot of people relate to it, which I like. And it's nice being able to, you can sell the area because, you know, as much as we spend a lot of time with our clients, spending the time on the valuation, understanding what they like about the house, and then we obviously do all their own viewings and portray it to the buyers. But actually having written from the seller's perspective goes a long way with buyers. It makes a difference. I've got a house coming on the market tomorrow. It's been on with an estate agent for about 14 weeks now. And we were just looking through their marketing and the description. Granted, it's not a bad description. It talks about the property, but then it goes on and on and on. And I look back at sort of 5 or 6 of this other agent's listings, and it's all just copy and pasted. The local area is copy and pasted. There's a few disclaimers. There's loads of things, but it's just all copy and paste. No buyer's going to read that. They don't care. Like, there's not. They're just going to look through the photos, and you're just losing an opportunity to sell the property. And I think that's why sellers' comments are just so important, because it makes it real, and people will generally read them because they speak to us about it on viewings. So clearly they're reading it. I think there'll be very few estate agencies write-ups that buyers are actually reading word for word.
Yeah, I think so. And what I hope now is most people they'll watch the video, because how much more of a I guess, an immersive experience can you get from the video, Dan, than kind of reading a little bit, looking at the floor plan. I was speaking to one of my sellers that's really, really trying to find a property at the moment, and I feel for them because it's just not coming on what they want. But they sent me the details for a chalet bungalow, and it had 2 bedrooms upstairs, 2 down, and they need 4 good-sized doubles. And although on the floor plan, the upstairs bedrooms look like they would be all right, the reality is it's in the roof, and you know, if you're tall, you're going to stand up and bang your head. So that's where video comes in. I know you love doing these videos, and you've now sort of taken to landscape videos, portrait videos, live videos, snippets of videos, promo videos. But that's a nice experience for the client, isn't it?
That's amazing. I mean, you said a phrase shortly ago. You said selling a lifestyle, and that's really what we think we're doing, and I want to push, because every house has its own personality and lifestyle. I want to show that off in the videos and the promotions we do. I'll be honest with you, I've got an awesome video going out on tomorrow, 5:15. So you've got to see it. It's probably the best video that we've done, and we're trying to up our levels each time to showcase that style of living with each house. And I just think you can't sell a home now without that quality of video to show what people are going to see. If there's more choice on the market, which inevitably there is right now, and there's more properties. Well, it's the same amount of properties are coming to the market, aren't they? But there's a little bit less selling. Some are falling through. You need to stand out, and a video really helps. And by the time someone walks through to see that home, and they've seen the detail in the video, and they go, "Wow, you really have showed exactly what it is." Yeah. They're not wasting their time. They're going to make you a good offer. So I just think that we love it. We love doing it. I think it's the best way to showcase a property. I think I could sell a home without photos, just a video.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think if it wasn't just the habit of how things are done and the fact that Rightmove makes you upload with photos, you could easily do that. And I guess we have done in reality, because how many properties have we sold before they've hit the portals? You know, we beat the portals and social campaigns and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely loads. Neil's confirming that it is getting a little chilly now, and saying, yeah, hoodies out. Evening to you. Mike has jumped in with a question. Where will be the most and least affected by current increases in mortgage costs, house price drops? Which is a great question. And actually, let me just, talking of stories, I picked up a load of new hoodies for people, because people always ask for these pink hoodies and black hoodies and stuff. So a few contacts and clients and friends and stuff, I picked a load up. And when I was in there chatting to the lady that owns the company, I said, how have you found business with things going on over the last 3 weeks? And they're in kind of Ascot as an area. And she said, well, look, I think we're quite lucky and quite fortunate around here that actually in the home counties, people were actually affected less by what's going on. And if we talk about maybe some of the interaction on social media and some of the marketing, some of the media bashing that goes on about what's happened recently, we are in our own little bubble just outside of London. So to answer Mike's question from my point of view, normally what we find in this area is prices are the first to go up and the last to come down, or is not as significant as some of the other areas. Everywhere I think will be impacted, and I do think we've seen prices drop X amount of percent so far since, let's say, the last 6 or 8 weeks. And I do think we will see potentially house prices drop on a land registry level next year, which we won't see this year, contrary to what Rightmove said last month. But I think around here we'll be impacted much less in a negative way than we will be in some of the other areas of the countries. What do you think, Georgina? What would be your kind of take on it? What type of properties do you think will be impacted most?
I think we're going to see the downsizers coming along, if we're talking sort of from now and next year. And obviously, if the prices are dropping, it's not so great for them in a lot of ways. If they can't get as much as they would have done, say, 6 months ago. So the downsizers, yeah, I almost feel, if it's on their minds, sooner might be better than later. In terms of the mortgage costs, obviously it's always going to affect the first-time buyers, because the bigger deposit that they can put down, the better, obviously. But with the cost of living going up, they're going to be able to save as much. So, yeah, it's a very interesting time, shall we say?
Yeah, I think the downsizing one is an interesting way, because we look at it as agents and say, "Oh yeah, if I'm downsizing 6 months ago, I would have got X amount. Let's call it 5% more." But maybe if they've been there 40 years and they paid 55 grand for the house that's now worth 700, but it was worth 750 6 months ago.
Yeah, but people don't see it like that. They see it as, oh, I've lost 50 grand.
Yeah,
But then
something
it's all
About people being, aware of, when it's only worth what somebody will pay for it in the current market, however it is.
yeah. What do you think,
it is
Ryan?
all, it is all relative though, isn't it? Because obviously, if talking about those downsides specifically, their house has now gone down 50 grand, and they're downsizing to, let's say, 450. That might have dropped similar percentage, although it's not 50 grand, it's 30 grand difference. I think it's all relative. And if they get moved into their new house that, Dan said at the start, moving into his house, he's going to be there for the foreseeable future. If you're downsizing, you're not really going to be looking to move in 2 or 3 years. So you're probably going to be there another 15, 20,
Maybe.
20 grand here, 10 grand. Yeah, well, potentially, I don't know. Or 10 years. But anyway, I think it's all relative. I agree with Georgina's point on first-time buyers. I think last time I was on, it was just as the interest rates were changing, and we talked about the figures of how much more it's going to cost people. The average interest rate on a 10, 15% deposit between 1.5% and 2% back in January, February time. We're now looking, 5% plus at the moment. It's going to cost on a 300 grand mortgage. It's going to be, £350, £400 extra a month. But on the flip side, they've never had a mortgage before, first-time buyers. So maybe they wouldn't necessarily know. They're just going to account their affordability changing to what they can actually afford rather than just pushing out. Oh, you got a mortgage calculator. Perfect.
Yeah, I thought it might be, on Mike's point there, and I'll move Mike so we're not covering up Dan. But I just thought it would be good for people to just see the exact numbers. So, let's say someone's buying a property at 450 and they're putting 100 grand down as a deposit, and they're buying at 350. And that means that if we'd have looked probably 3 or 4 months ago, they'd have had that interest rate of about 3%. Pretty much everyone does 35-year terms now. And that would have meant that mortgage that on the property that they'd have bought at about 450 would have been 1357. And I think if we look at that in comparison to a rental property, someone buying in this area at 450 is probably going to be spending about 1750 on rent, I would have said, based on today's climate, 1700, something like that. What we're now going to see, and if I just change that to 6%, we're now going to see that climb by, call it 700 quid for ease of maths, 650, 700 quid. We're going to see a £700 a month increase. Now, some people, I think that will impact, and some people will need to move, and some people will want to get on the ladder. And some people will be in a position where they see a property that was on at 500 that they can get for 450, and they think, do you know what? I'm going to save on the stamp duty. It's 50k less than it was before. I'm going to bite the bullet on the £700 a month more that I'm going to have to pay for when it was 500. But in the grand spectrum of things, I'm kind of all right with that for the next 3 years, because I want to make that move into that 3-bedroom detached or nice 3-bedroom townhouse, potentially 4-bedroom townhouse, something like that. That's my thing. I don't think it would be like that for everyone, but that's my general sort of feeling on it. Dan, what do you think?
Well, yeah, majority of those mortgages, if you're borrowing 350,000, it's probably going to be two of you. So you can look at that very differently as two incomes coming in and looking after it, because not that I'm going to say what my mortgage is, but as for one person on their own, that would be a lot of money, wouldn't it? But if it's two incomes, you're probably looking, well, I need to move, I need the space, I've got a baby on the way, or I want to upsize. That actually just make it work. And also we put in 6% there. Are they 6%? Will they be a bit lower than that the minute it starts to come in as well? So I don't think it's going to be that. Yes, it will affect things, but people will still find a way to want to move. There you go.
5.25. There might be some of those knocking around.
Yeah, suddenly between two people and then everything else, it's not as bad as what it looks. I was going to say on Mike's point, how will it affect the houses? I think it will just affect every single house across the market and every single property, depending on the size of the mortgage. Because obviously, the larger the mortgage you're getting, the bigger that percentage hurts your payback. And I think that's the way I'd put it across. We unfortunately had a couple of sales that have fallen through due to mortgage products being pulled from people. and they're back on the market. One's under offer, one's hopefully going to sell very soon. But one of their mortgages was about 2.5% higher, but because they were borrowing a significant amount of money, they were buying at over 1.1 million, they were borrowing about 650, 700,000. They've still got a huge deposit, but the difference in payments was like £2,500 a month more.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets really unrealistic. Yeah. So it all depends on what you're borrowing.
I totally agree. And I think, that's one of those things where people will be impacted, and maybe what we've seen a lot of over the last 18 months is people really stretching themselves on the affordability. They're really, really gone, right, let's borrow the max we can and lock in. And I think that's not the normal case. I mean, most buyers that we've registered pre-pandemic were, I could afford up to 450, but I'm only going to spend 380. That was a very normal conversation that you would have with someone. So you'd show them a couple of properties at 400, and maybe they bought a house at 390, and it was well within their budget. What advice would we give here? So Ryan, I know you've got some data and stats where you are, but what advice would you give to someone that's still struggling to find? Do we feel, I don't know whether maybe because of everything that's gone on, there's a little bit of hesitation around people putting their property to the market? But what does the stats show that you've seen recently?
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. So in Tylehurst and West Reading, so the two postcodes RG30 and RG31, which is kind of where Lauren and I sort of work mostly, the listing numbers first 3 weeks of September compared to the first 3 weeks of October are literally identical. So first 19 days, there was 71 properties listed in September. First 19 days of October, 71 properties listed. So the numbers of properties that have come to market haven't changed. And the big change is there's some sale numbers. So that September market I just mentioned there was 75 property sales across the two postcodes in the first 3 weeks. This month, October, up until today, there's only 51. So there's 22% less properties selling. So that means the same numbers are coming on, less are selling. The advice, Andy, for buyers or the people that have just sold and struggling to find, there should be more available because less has gone under offer. So there's going to be more available for people to buy. So just you've got to stick in there and you will find it. The main advice to be given to sellers, and more importantly from estate agents' perspective to the buyers, is to get their mortgage valuations locked in as soon as possible. I've had a couple of recent sales where my sellers still need to find. And I've said to the buyers that get your mortgage application in as soon as possible. Your mortgage offer is going to be valid for 6 months. The longer you leave it, the more chance the rate will go up. So get it locked in. Obviously, buyers committed. Maybe not commit to paying for searches straight away, but definitely get your mortgage valuation straight away. And then when you're a seller coming to offer on a property, you can turn around and say, my buyer's got their mortgage offer out already. It puts you in a strong position. Dan, obviously, we were talking about offers a while ago. Being able to be in a position where you're either sold or you're sold to a first-time buyer who's got a mortgage offer out, I know which buyer we'd be looking at more seriously. So that's the positives. It's going to be more available to view. Things are taking a little bit longer to sell, 3 or 4 weeks rather than 3 or 4 days. So you just got to get yourself out there, maybe spread your area and keep looking because things will come available.
And based on those numbers as well, Ryan, we're talking September, about 110% of what was coming to the market was selling. That's the kind of craziness that we've been used to. Whereas in what you just said there, about 65, maybe 68%.
It's 68%, 71% of properties have sold still. And we go back to a few years ago, we obviously all come from a high street background. If you're running a successful branch and selling 60% of your stock, you didn't have the directors on your back. That was good. So we're still selling 7 out of 10 houses.
I've seen it a lot lower than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I said I've seen it a lot lower than that in the past.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's not bad. When you put that into perspective as well, guys, of what we've seen with obviously Crazy Kazamazi coming in with his mini budget. We've seen 2 different prime ministers come and go in that time. We've seen mortgage rates change. We've seen mortgage companies come out of the market altogether. We've seen vegans pouring milk in the middle of Waitrose and just doing it everywhere. We've seen all sorts in the last couple of
crazy.
Yeah, I think Big Ben got painted white yesterday because of something to do with milk. I don't know.
I don't want to drive in case I get stopped on the road by one of the protesters.
All of this going on, the pound has plummeted. Obviously, there's a war in Ukraine, and still 71% of properties in the first 2 weeks of October were selling. And I think that just shows the strength and depth of the UK housing market. Yes, it will go up and down because that's what things do. Demand and supply impact that, but still there is a shortage of properties available for the amount of buyers in the UK, and that's why any government that comes into play wants to get building going, because it hasn't been happening in the last 10 years. So in answering your question, Andy, if we look at September versus October, in that micro area, there's 20 more properties available for people to see compared to what there was before that had sold in the first 90 days. So hopefully there'll be more choice for people, more confidence. And I like that advice, Georgina, that Ryan gave for people there as well. But buyers where the vendors haven't found, normally we would say maybe don't pay for survey and wait for the seller. But now it would make sense financially, spend the 300 quid on the survey, get your mortgage offer as quickly as possible, and sort of almost have the bank commit to you before maybe base rates change again. It's quite good advice.
Yeah, because you want your seller to be in a good position when they do put an offer forward. So it's in your interest to be as far progressed as you can, really. So yeah, I agree with that.
So for anyone that's thinking of moving, let's say in the next 6 to 9 months, they're watching this video, maybe after we've gone live or currently, if they're thinking of selling, we've kind of put as a title here about the importance of pricing right, Dan, and not to chase the market. And that's almost don't be chased by the market negatively, I think. So pricing right, as Ryan, you alluded to a couple of weeks ago, if a seller prices right, it's a seller's market. And if they don't price right, it's a buyer's market. And that's really important, that the estate agent is confident, local, highly experienced in the area to get the pricing right for the seller. That's a big commitment, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, massively. I mean, regardless of what the market's like right now and what it was like a year ago, 6 months ago, 4 weeks ago, I've always believed in this, telling people the right price to market your home. Doesn't matter how hot the market is, because you'll get the best results that the market is willing to offer at that time if you do it correctly. I always use that phrase as well. Don't chase the market. So if you start at one price and it's wrong, and you're suddenly reducing and chasing your tail, by the time you maybe get to that sweet spot, the offers are going to come in much lower than they would have if you got it right in the first 2 weeks. So you end up selling for less than you would have in the first instance. You can create your own mini market, your own bubble around your house if you get the marketing fantastic and the price so competitive that people just have to buy it because they're going to battle for it and you're going to sell. I've seen that in marketplaces where, I don't know, do you remember 2016, 17, Brexit, everything was horrible because no one knew what was going on for ages. And the market just, I didn't say it just dropped. It just went dull, didn't it? It was flat. Yeah. It's just like nothing was exciting about anything. And houses would sit for a long time. But if people would take the right advice and they did put the property on at a good price, I tell you what, they were flying out still. There were properties that would still fly out even in that dull market. So you can create your own buzz around your own property if you want to sell. And that's how you become one of the 71% that's selling, not one of the 29% that is sitting there, because you can still move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really, really important for people, is that there's questions you can ask an estate agent. I think when you go on evaluation is, what brings you to that price that you've given me? And why do you think that's the price that you're going to sell it for? I think it's a really important question to have the estate agent answer that, because you'll know whether it's just a pie in the sky or whether they've got a theory behind why they think that is, why that's a strategy. And I also think it's really important to ask your estate agent, what's the plan B and C if it goes on the market and doesn't sell instantly? What's your backup plan? Because you're my agent, you're working for me. What's the backup plan if it doesn't work? And I think they're good questions that you can ask on evaluation, because you'll build confidence in that individual or that business, or you won't off the back of those questions, I think. So just quickly going around the room before we wrap up, Ryan, best number one tip for people selling in 2023. We won't say price because we just said that. But what would be your biggest tip for anyone that's looking to sell their property in 2023? What's one thing that you would say look out for?
Obviously, the best tip to get people sold is to use avocado property, of course, first of all.
Plug.
But no, joking aside, the marketing of a property has got to be absolutely spot on. For the last couple of years, it's been so easy, genuinely so easy to sell houses. You take a good couple of photos, you stick it on Rightmove, the phone starts ringing. I think a lot of estate agents will get found out next year, where it will get a little bit tougher to sell houses. And you said there, you've got to have your marketing plan. You've got to have bespoke property videos, an agent that genuinely cares about you and not just being a number. Because my office I worked in before, at one point we were down to 9 or 10 properties on the market because we'd sold everything. When those numbers start getting to having 20, 30, 40 properties, we remember what it's like when you had a stock list of 50 houses. You might not speak to your vendor for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's crucial you have a relationship with your estate agent and they're there for them and they genuinely care about getting you sold. That'll be the difference, in my opinion, over the next probably 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, totally agree. Georgina, what about yourself? Anything further than that in terms of tips for clients?
Yeah, I'm echoing what you're saying maybe a little bit, but to do your own research and not to be afraid to ask why an agent is suggesting a certain price. If they can't back it up with actual evidence, surely you just call them out on it. Surely, you must know. But people unfortunately sometimes see pound signs, and inevitably it doesn't work out for them. So yeah, lots of research on their marketing and your own research on prices as well.
Yeah. And Dan, do you think if you're going to put your house on the market, let's call it a family home, 3-bed semi, 4-bed detached, something like that, and it's just you've been there a few years, maybe the kids have run around, put a few handprints on, whatever, it's not an immaculate show home, do you think a good piece of advice would be to go down to Homebase, spend 300-400 quid and just give it a little touch up and give it a little refresh, not go to the level that they do in the US where they spend 30-40 grand on a refit? But do you think something like that helps you as an agent, or are you not really fussed, just plug and go? What's your advice there?
I think you sort of read my mind of what I was going to say, something along those lines. I was going to say, yeah, look at this, unagi. I was going to say, love your home and imagine you were buying it. So if your home's marketed, would you be interested in buying it? Obviously you live there, but you see people don't go to any lengths to even tidy, straighten up, make sure things are right. And I know that when we go to valuations, I'm sure all estate agents do, they should give some advice on how to best present it and get it ready. Do it, because you can see a vast difference to people who stage a home for photos and the video than people who just don't. Yeah. And you got one chance to get it right when you market. It's like making a first impression, isn't it? So you've got to be absolutely A-star.
Yeah, no, really good advice there, and appreciate everyone's time on this call. I think there's people watching and listening, and I think it feels, even though the craziness of today, it feels like the market is just finding its place now on where it's going to sit for the next couple of months, maybe half a year, even a year. It feels like it's just sort of transitioned into what we know, and I'm excited for the UK housing market next year. I think people have hoped for it to have a correction. I think it is a correction, not a crash. And I think the correction has come not necessarily from all of the lockdown pandemic craziness, but from the prices that happened in the summer when there was such low stock on the market. There was a little bit of a false economy there in some areas. And regardless of Rightmove reporting price increases in the first, 19 days or 18 days of October, I think land registry year on year, if we get to December 2023, my view is we'll see a 5 to 10% change in land registry prices, which still pre-pandemic puts everyone about 15% up. So I think that's where we're heading. And if anyone's got any questions, they want to speak to Georgina about Woodley, anywhere in that area, if someone just wants to move home and you know what, you'd rather work with a really experienced lady rather than a cheeky chappy group of suits, then speak to Georgina, because she'll help you out on that basis. And if you want to speak to anyone looking to sell in the Shinfield, Winnersh, Arborfield area, 3 Mile Cross, everyone's seen what Dan and Neil have been doing. They got themselves in the paper from the results they've had with clients. So have a chat with them. And as West Reading, you know, from anywhere in the West Reading area, if you're thinking of moving RG30, RG31, heading further out, you've even done business in Newbury, I think, Ryan. So even heading that direction, clearly from Ryan's data that he supplied with us on this chat, he knows his stuff. He's been in the game for a long time. And if it's a different area, speak to me and I'll put you in contact with the best person. And if I can't find the best person, I'll deal with it myself and we will help you. So avocado property next year. Watch this space. We're going to be doing big things, but we will be back next Thursday, 6 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you later,
guys.
Bye.
See ya.